This is the Fifth Estate Winning Headlines, your media police post. In this segment, we summarize some of the headlines that you may have missed this morning, but we also take a look at the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country. Today is the 19th of August 2021 and I am Tujay.
I'm Tuam.
And I am Miss K. Again, in case you missed today's headlines, here they are. Daily Nation, Uhuru corners Oka chiefs to back Raila. The Standard, Uhuru talks deadlock amid BBI anxiety. The Star, Raila Mudavadi Kalonzo deal on verge of success. And finally, People Daily, now or never. Uhuru warns NASA leaders.
Introducing the PD was a good choice.
Good choice.
Coming in with a lot of strong headlines.
Very, very well crafted.
Absolutely.
What do you have to tell us?
Everyone should follow PD in how they craft their headlines. Everybody. Now, we have in the past told you that succession elections attract two things. One is assassinations, and second, constitutional crisis. And that is why we must talk about Raila Odinga's chopper accident in May this year in Siaya. On May 30th this year, a chopper flew Raila to Siaya from Kisumu. Raila disembarked and went on to receive President Uhuru Kenyatta, who was in Siaya inspecting government projects. Soon after Baba had disembarked, the chopper took to the skies. But this time around, it did not make it. The chopper crashed as soon as it left the ground. And herein is where we want to pose a question. If the chopper had left with Baba on board and the chopper malfunctioned midair and crashed, where will Baba be today? Wouldn't we be talking about or talking of a George Saitoti scenario? And if the worst had happened, who would have been the beneficiary? And the answer is simple. It would have been William Ruto. And that's because Ruto's path of least resistance to 2022 is if Raila is not a competitor or non-existent, period. Therefore, should anything happen to Baba, you'll know where to look. Oh, and by the way, how sure are you the Siaya crash was an accident?
What are you suggesting to
A lot of things that have been said there. I don't know if I want to scratch that surface.
Let's stick to allegedly. So we want to announce again that the candidate is and will be Raila Odinga. Fact. Why else would the president summon Baba and the Oka principals to Mombasa for the second time just this month? In political economy, this is what we call the building of elite consensus by dominance, not dialogue. Uhuru Kenyatta has called them to appear before the King's Court to dominate them into a position.
Yes.
And that position is Raila. In our view, Uhuru has taken up the position that is rightfully his, that of a kingmaker. We have also repeatedly submitted that Uhuru Kenyatta is the least studied politician in Kenya.
Yes.
This is a man who works quietly, considers timing, and always learns from history. And in his last term, the president has focused more than ever on legacy, the development he will provide to the country, and the economic acceleration that will catapult Kenya into the future. But beyond this, Uhuru finds himself in a position that is not unique, but carries a lot of weight, that kingmaker position. Moi, Kibaki, and now Uhuru have found themselves in a position where they get to create the future.
Yes.
So the origin of the kingmaker comes from the second half of the 15th century in England. Both the House of Lancaster and the House of York had a claim to the throne of England. And this started a series of civil wars known as the War of the Roses. In this time, kings were murdered and deposed. Armies marched on London, and old noble names were ruined. And at the center of the struggle for power was a man called Richard Neville, the Earl of Warwick, the man who would become known as the kingmaker. This was the guy who could make or break a leader, because the role of the kingmaker is that they have great influence on political succession without they themselves being a viable candidate. So this guy, the Earl of Warwick, made one man king, changed his mind, and then crowned someone else. Why? Because he held all the cards.
Yes.
And this is where we have found ourselves today.
Yes.
Sure, a promise was made in 2017, but it no longer applies. Because Uhuru Kenyatta has decided to work quietly, consider timing, and learn from history.
Yes.
And history is why Kenyatta is going to get this right.
Beautiful.
He will learn from the mistakes of his teacher, Arap Moi.
Yeah.
When Moi endorsed Uhuru in 2002,
Yeah.
he made the fatal mistake of backing a man who had not cooked enough. If it takes 10 years to make a president, Uhuru was not ready, and the moment proved it.
Yeah.
And it's even possible that Raila would have been the better choice.
Yes.
But now, 20 years later, Uhuru knows better. As kingmaker, he has the choice to leave Kenya with Raila, who has cooked, or with William Ruto, who is still breastfeeding. But from now on, I think we ought to refer to this moment as the one that formed the Mombasa Consensus.
I like that,
Oh
the
my
Mombasa
goodness.
Consensus.
William Ruto is breastfeeding on the wheelbarrow.
You had to take it that step further, didn't you?
You just did. So I'm going to take a pause and move us a little bit away from politics and discuss something else. So tomorrow, the Court of Appeal will deliver their decision on BBI. And whatever the decision the judiciary makes tomorrow, whether they allow reggae to go on, keep on playing, or they stop the music, the judiciary should be ready to bear the consequences of their choices. They must be prepared to bear the burden of the choice they have made with the political destiny of Kenya. And I'll refer to the president. In his speech during this year's Madaraka Day, the president stated that every opportunity in the exercise of our freedoms must be tempered by the consequences of choice. And yes, it's true that the 2010 Constitution expanded our fields of freedom and it broadened the independence of institutions, specifically the judiciary. But the president noted, and I agree, that while we are now more independent and free, our laws also expanded the burden of the choices we make. He said, and again I quote, "Every right granted has a corresponding responsibility." And this paradox of choices and freedoms applies to both individuals and institutions like the judiciary. So as the Court of Appeal makes this decision tomorrow, they should remember that it is the people who truly bear the burden of the judicial choices they make. Before they read their decision, they should subject it to a cost-benefit analysis and ask who bears the burden of our decision. And could there be some unintended consequences because of it? And I say this because the president said that the moral foundations of justice demand that the judiciary bears the burden of choice and the consequences thereof, especially where the burden of judicial choices is proposed to be carried by the people. Anyway, should the courts rule against BBI, Raila already told us that they will not contest the decision. They will go straight to Parliament. And maybe Raila and the president are in Mombasa, amongst other things, for the Mombasa Consensus, discussing the revised draft. We have a three-part criteria that we use to break down the headlines for you. We ask ourselves three questions. Is it topical or speculative, repetitive or groundbreaking, and thoughtful, or just plain lazy? Daily Nation, Uhuru corners Oka chiefs to back Raila. Standard, Uhuru talks deadlock amid BBI anxiety. Toss that. Raila Mudavadi Kalonzo deal on verge of success. That's from the Star. And People Daily, now or never, Uhuru warns NASA leaders.
Honestly, I feel like we had already decided that PD
I think
was
we
winning.
had.
PD.
PD is
And the
ours.
PD being a free and small newspaper is completely embarrassing all the large ones.
I know, and I love it. Keep going, PD.
Keep going, PD.
PD gives us our winning headline. And now on to our final thought. But before we get there, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel.
And now our final thought. It is inspired by a book entitled Science of Likability, Charm, Wit, Humor, and 16 Studies that show you how to master them. What a long title.
Sorry.
Anyway, by a man called Patrick King.
And who are we dedicating this book to today?
To Musalia Mudavadi.
None other. So in this book, The Science of Likability, that is exactly what you will get. The author has taken 16 of the most influential, famous, and effective psychological studies and broken them down to see exactly how you can use their findings to your advantage. And in the author's own words, this book provides the reader with 100% scientifically proven ways to make friends quickly, turn enemies into friends, gain trust, and be likable. Mudavadi, please take out your notebook. So I want to summarize the book as follows. You need to influence people in order to attract them. And as we inch closer to 2022, our political principles need to focus on likability more than ever. But what I found most interesting in this book was chapter 3 on how to make friends out of enemies. And in this chapter, King says, it is actually easier to turn an enemy into a friend than you think, and they won't even realize what's happening. So the science behind this is something called the Benjamin Franklin effect, named after the inventor and founding father of the United States. So writing about a single political rival in his autobiography, Franklin said, "I did not aim at gaining his favor by paying any respect to him, but after some time took on this other method. Having heard he had in his library a certain very scarce and curious book, I wrote a note to him expressing my desire of pursuing that book and requesting that he would do me the favor of lending it to me for a few days. He sent it immediately, and I returned it in about a week, with another note expressing strongly my sense of the favor. When we next met in the house, he spoke to me, which he had never done before, and with great civility, and he ever after manifested a readiness to serve me on all occasions, so that we became great friends, and our friendship continued until his death. This is another instance of the truth of an old maxim I had learned. He that has done you a kindness will be more ready to do you another than he who you yourself have found obliged."
Yes.
So just in short, get someone to do you a favor. For Benjamin Franklin, get them to lend you a book.
Yes.
For Mudavadi, maybe it's time to kneel before Raila. Essentially, the Ben Franklin effect is a psychological phenomenon. And according to this effect, if you ask someone to help you out in some way, and indeed they do, they will then be more likely to do you another favor.
Yes.
So MDVD, what are you going to ask for?
Oh my goodness. I love chapter 10 on how to be endearing. And the central thesis of this chapter is perfection is boring. In fact, people hate perfect people. Oh, and by the way, Prof likes to say that never trust a man without a limp.
Yeah.
And you know why this is the case? Perfection is intimidating. Human beings like seeing their flaws in other people. Now, I saw Musalia Mudavadi the other day telling us how he was finance minister at the age of 29 and vice president at the age of 33. And I was like, what a boring guy. And that's because that's a perfect place to be. And yet, how many people become ministers and vice presidents at 30? It is simply not normal. Now, the author tells us of a trio, Aronson Willerman and Floyd, and Floyd, who in 1966 discovered an easy way for people to like you, but not feel threatened. In fact, this method is used by politicians carefully all around the world, as it is important that they are relatable and non-threatening. Now, the scientists discovered that perfection was not endearing, and that those who made mistakes and who generally showed themselves to be human were far more likable, approachable, and relatable. In the context of the experiment, it was shown that subjects liked people who had knocked over a cup of coffee more than those who did not. This was called the Pratfall effect, presumably named after a guy called Pratt, who continually likes to fall. I would therefore want to advise Musalia, please expose some of your imperfections. In fact, adopt a buffoonish persona like Boris Johnson. Put on some shoes, Chikoleko, and go for a meeting with Baba, just to make us laugh.
Yeah. In fact, I think, Tuje, you once said that the media in the UK caught Boris Johnson one day disheveling himself intentionally.
And that's what Boris Johnson does.
Yes.
Like that buffoonery that you're talking about, 2M,
Yeah.
none of it is real.
Yes.
How can you be talking about a guy who went to Eton and
Yeah.
then went to Cambridge and
Yeah.
you're calling him a buffoon?
Yeah,
it is
absolutely.
all concocted just for, exactly what you're saying.
It's choreographed.
To look likable.
It's choreographed, but you don't believe. If you have to fake it until you make it, please do it.
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to dedicate chapter 4 of the book to Mudavadi. The chapter is titled How to Never Be Taken Advantage of. And according to the author, people subconsciously size up all their relationships based on how much value they get from such relationships. And we're happiest when the give and take is equal.
Yeah.
In 1978, three gentlemen, Walster, and Burcheld, conducted a study on what they called the theory of equal relationships. And they found that people subconsciously or consciously keep track of the exchange of favors in their relationships.
Wow.
And the best and happiest relationships were those that maintain this internal score sheet of who is sacrificing and serving more, and those who overcompensate to maintain the balance in the relationship. So what does this have to do with Mudavadi? Well, we have said in the past that Mudavadi has a tendency of being treated like a shamba boy. You can't do this to me, guys. He has a tendency to be overlooked and taken advantage of. In 2017, Mudavadi created NASA. Then Raila took it away from him, gave Kalonzo a piece and kept the rest. Then Mudavadi was left to scavenge for an obscure position with a posh name called Chief Minister that was not supported by any law. It was a political joke that was not even funny. Now, a new negotiation process is ongoing under Oka, and Mudavadi could benefit from the lessons in this chapter. He could begin by keeping track and developing an internal tally sheet as to the quality of his Oka relationships. Then he could keep his Oka coalition mates accountable on who is sacrificing or serving more in the relationship. Then finally, he could insist on a strong win-win position in the coalition. These actions will earn Mudavadi the respect of the other members of the coalition. It will show them that he is no longer a pushover, a person who can simply be taken advantage of.
It's too late. It's too late.
I think there's still some hope for him.
But you know,
Sorry, Ms. K, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Yes.
Did you select this chapter with the intention of giving him serious advice?
Yes, this is the advice that is actually given in the chapter.
but you know,
as
but
how
you,
to stop being
listen,
taken advantage
listen, guys.
of.
But you know what? The other person being taken advantage of,
Yes,
if you really think about it, is William Ruto. And you know who's taking advantage of him?
that's also true.
It's Kikuyus.
Yeah.
By the
That
time
is
he
very
realizes, he will have spent a whole fortune.
And you know, that's a good point, because if we take Ms. K's chapter into context, that give and take, who's
Yeah.
keeping the
Who's
tally?
keeping the tally?
Absolutely.
Of what the sacrifices that are being made. I hope William Ruto that
Have,
you're
Ki-
keeping track.
have Kikuyus made a
Yeah.
sacrifice for Ruto?
Take
Yeah?
this to the bank.
No,
They
not
will
yet.
betray him so bad. By the time he's done, he'll be broke and they will not be with him. They'll be
Pushover.
they'll be the person who has the money.
Anyway, today we had a winning headline from People Daily. Now or never, Uhuru wants NASA leaders. Don't forget, you can find us on our TV screens. We're on Pan Free to Air, GoTV, and Star Times. I'll end with a quote from Louis McMaster Bujold. When you choose an action, you choose the consequences of that action. When you desire a consequence, you damn well better take the action that would create it. Have a good evening.
God bless.